In this video, we're going to be building our cabinet material schedules using the materials we set up in the last video. So from the main screen, we're going to click on material schedules. And remember, we deleted them, so the only thing we have under assembly is this new assembly option. We're going to ignore the rest of the material schedules for now. We're simply focused on assembly material schedules. So the first thing I want to do before I get into the actual material schedule part of it, just like when we're naming materials, we also want to use a very consistent naming standard for material schedules. Now, how I like to do it is the exterior species and then slash the interior species. And so what that looks like is I would have cherry slash pre-finished UV. And then you really don't need the description. It's not hurting anybody if it's there, but I typically just erase it. So when we use that naming standard, it makes it really easy to because more than likely this drop down will get fairly long if you're doing several different types of materials. But with this, if you're doing walnut on the, on your finished ends and things, it's a walnut slash pre-finished UV. And even better, if you offer different types of interiors, like say you have a white melamine interior or a pre-finished or a gray melamine. Now you could say cherry slash white melamine or cherry slash pre-finished UV. This setup just makes it easy to just quickly look at and recognize what's happening. And I like to put exterior first. That way all the cherry species will sort, because I care more about exterior than interior. So that's my suggestion for naming standards, but if you have your own ideas, you're more than welcome to use it. I just do recommend being consistent. So what is a material schedule? Essentially, a material schedule takes the different materials that we built in the previous video, and it maps them to specific types of part. Say you use 3/4 or 2-sided UV on your adjustable shelf. It's the material schedule that controls that relationship. So let me expand some of these options here. We have different bandings. We have our exposed parts such as, finished ends, sink skirts, panels, and then all the interior parts like bottoms, decks, fixed shelves, all these different types of parts. And if you're not familiar with the terminology on some of these, it will become clear once we get inside of a job. So I'm going to start by just going down this list and assigning our materials to the material schedule. And just like with materials, the first one we do is going to take us longer, but once we have the template, we'll always copy from it and then just replace what we need to. So all the future ones will be faster. This one will be a little bit slower. Okay, so first thing I want to mention, not everything here needs a material. Like I really don't have to put a material at the main assembly level or even like at the banding level, because these are just categories. So these little things with the yellow lines here are the actual parts. So for example, if I put cherry edge banding here and pre-finished UV under interior banding, and notice I'm using my little quick filters here to just quickly pull up what I need. This is why I built these, is because when I get into material schedules, I can just toggle back and forth really quickly. Okay, so what a category does is it makes it easy to change multiple things under that. And where it really helps you is, again, like I said, later down the road when we're adding more material schedules. So let me give you an example. So I'm going to put cherry 3/4 2-sided plywood on the entire exposed category, right? So that assigns everything below it. Now the nice thing is, let's say that skin is using 1/4 inch instead of 3/4. Okay, great. So everything's 3/4 on the exposed ends except for the skins. Now what's nice is if you would copy this, and I don't have another species, so I'm just going to drag in UV here instead. Rather than having to drag UV on top of every one of these, I can just put it right on the main, see this exposed category here? If I drag UV at the very main one, it replaces all the matches, but notice it didn't override anything different. And so there's kind of a strategy that you want to look at when you're assigning your main categories. So what I like to do is I like to establish, okay, what's going to be most common in the parts in this group, which in this category, I'm going to say that 3/4 2-sided cherry plywood is the most common. So that's whatever is used most often, that's what I want as my category. Now, like a situation like banding, a lot of times I don't even put a parent category there because there's only 2 pieces anyways, and they're almost always different. So it really doesn't gain me anything. So totally acceptable to not have any materials assigned to the parents, but it is a shortcut. Like on exposed and interior and some of these bigger categories, I would highly recommend it because it will save you a lot of time when you go copying this in the future. Okay, and then the other thing I want to do is I want to remove the material on the horizontal laminate and the vertical laminate. And those are kind of exceptions. You really don't have any control of them in the construction method. What it does is anytime you have a finished in, if you have something assigned to these laminate categories, it just automatically slaps laminate on top of it. And for this example, I'm not going to be doing laminate. So that's why I'm going to just right click on it and unassign it. Okay, so I'm going to close up the exposed category. We're going to say that's good enough for now. And then interior, again, before we assign our parent category, let's just look down here and think about what would be the most common. So, we got adjustable shelves, we got decks, we got, nailers, tops, and, several different things. So I'm going to say that UV 3/4 inch is going to be my main category. And I'm going to be starting with frameless in this example, but you'll see that, it carries over no matter what we're doing, whether you're building face frame or frameless. Okay, now the first thing in the list here is adjustable glass shelf, so we don't want that to be UV. I'll just remove that for a minute. But the bottom, clip back, the deck, drawer stretcher, fixed shelf, and again, if you don't know the terminology on some of these, we'll go through that when we get into the job. Gusset, I think I'm going to leave everything at 3/4 except my unfinished back. I'm going to do 1/4 inch. But you can see with the filter set up and with our materials already in place, it's not too difficult to go through and build these material schedules. So again, if I was building face frame, I might be using 1/2 inch instead of 3/4, but same idea applies. So I'll close the interior section and let's move on to the face. Shadow line is for what I call GOLA, or that kind of integrated hardware. You can just ignore that for right now. Even though I'm doing frameless, I'm going to go ahead and assign cherry solid wood. Because what happens is sometimes when I build custom pieces like a floating shelf or mitered fillers or something, I want to reference some of these frame parts. And if I have it as not assigned, it won't work well when I use this material schedule. So even if you're doing frameless, I would encourage you to fill out that frame category. And then we get into our toe parts. We're going to just skip over legs and leg levelers for now. And finish skin. This is not added by default. I am going to go ahead and put 1/4 inch cherry ply as my skin. And notice I'm just assigning it as a parent category because I want everything underneath it to be 1/4 inch. And like I said, this is not actually added by Cabinet Vision itself. You have to have a UCS or something in place to add the skin for you, which we will talk about later. We don't want to get too deep right now. I want to focus on the foundations and making you aware of where everything's coming from. And then for structural toe kick, I want to use UV. And I'm just going to use that 3/4 pre-finished UV for all of these. Okay, so that gives us a good start. We assigned our banding, we assigned our case parts for exposed and interior, and we did our face parts. We do need to build a couple more material schedules for doors and for door boxes before we can actually get into the construction part yet. So let's get into the next video and get that done.